Hi guys, wee Bob here, and I am doing a community question. Now, I've not been on this channel for many months, years probably. Doing some arcade stuff previously, but I've moved everything over to the art channel, as I've spoke about many times before. So getting this set up today was a wee bit tricky. I've not had a webcam set up for a long time. A lot of my artwork is done through the computer, recording the computer screen, so you don't need to see my face. um, this video is a video response to Mamemeister, and I'm just trying to bring up my notes so that I can see what I've got here. And the question he was posing was something along the lines of, has the internet been a positive or negative influence on gaming or classic gaming? He wasn't so much talking about modern equipment, modern games even. So not really talking about the Assassin's Creed of the world and the Jedi Outlaws that's just come out recently that I was looking at this morning. So talking mainly about your thoughts about the positive and negative impact on the internet with regards to gaming, and specifically kind of classic gaming, and what was your thoughts and memories, I guess, of that time. So I've wrote down some notes, and I wanted to start with kind of arcades. Arcades weren't a big thing in my childhood. Arcades growing up were few and far between. Sometimes when we went to the holiday camp where we had the static caravan, they had like an arcade available. I was more interested in playing a lot of the two pence sliding games. Used to save up all my two pences between myself and my sister, and we would go and play those kind of arcade, win money games. There was also the one where you could put in 10 pence and you had to bet on a horse, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and obviously the horses went along, and eventually one of them won, and you were so excited if your horse was going really good, and then it ultimately would slow down and somebody else would overtake. But it was fun at the time, and we spent our kind of pocket money that way. It was prior to the days of having handheld systems. The Game Boy may have been out at that point, but I'm doubtful. I would need to go and look. I never had a Game Boy as a kid. I had a Game Gear when that eventually came out, which must have been 90s. Aye, it must have been 90s, because the Mega Drive didn't come out until the 90s. But I could be wrong. I would need to go and look. You can correct me in the comments if you wish. So, yeah, I mean, arcades weren't a big thing. The local one to me was in the leisure centre. I've probably talked about this in previous videos on this channel. There was Turtles. I remember Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles being there. The Simpsons game. There was a few other games I'm trying to remember. Mortal Kombat definitely came to the arcade at one point. But by that time, the Mega Drive had really been released, and I would have been 12 or 13 when the Mega Drive came out. So I eventually got that. So that didn't really mean arcades were a big thing, but the internet didn't exist at that point. I never had a PC that could go to the internet and look up reviews. The internet just didn't it wasn't a thing. You would maybe get the odd review on CFAX from memory. They might have had a bit on games. There used to be a quiz game on CFAX called Bamboozled, which I used to love playing. It was a kind of just a general knowledge quiz game, and it came up when you typed in the numbers onto the TV remote control. If you haven't heard of that before, go give it a look up. I might see if I can get some footage and put it on the screen. But yeah, the arcades and gaming and that. So I used to live down near a shopping mall. It was kind of new. It was becoming a big thing, and there used to be a Woolworths in there. There was a John Menzies that I'm pretty sure my mum used to work in. It's now, well, it was a WH Smith. I think it's all totally gone now. There's nothing really other than charity shops and other bits and bobs. But my memories of those days were a lot about how did you choose your game. Now, as I says, Spectrum games, I remember going and looking at them, and I remember going to there was a place called the Forum near where I lived, and the Forum was like it was like a market kind of shop thing, if that's the best way to describe it. Loads of kind of little stalls. There was like a butcher's, and then there's a place where you go get your hair cut, and there was a sewing bit. There was like markety type stalls with sweeties laid out in little bags that you could buy. But they had a guy who had a computer shop, and it was lined with like C64, Atari, um, Amstrad games, and you used to be able to go and he would copy them for you for £2 or £3 at the time. I remember going and doing that quite a lot. And I remember looking at the covers of games to try and decide what to choose. But ultimately, it was magazines, and it was. I've spoken about this in the past. There's this picture here that's based on an old Zap cover or a Crash cover. In fact, it's a Crash cover because it's a broken Spectrum that's on the cover. And Ollie Frey is kind of the reason I started really getting into artwork. It's something I really enjoyed seeing. I've always had an interest in it, but it wasn't really until about 8-9 years ago now that I started really trying to understand how to draw. And I'm still learning. I've not really done much this year. Did the Spider-Man one for Del Boy, and I'm hope he's doing well, following some health issues. Go check out his channel if you haven't. If you're even still subscribed to this channel, which is Wee Bob. So I did the Spider-Man drawing. I've done one of Hermione going to war. Done one of a kind of Norse goddess thing. Again, I'll maybe chuck them up on the screen if I can edit this together. But really, what was the kind of the first kind of memories I've got of magazines prior to the internet was, I've got some games down here. Let me just check if I want to get through them. So like one of the big, it was anticipation. For me, it was FIFA. I was well into football. I wasn't allowed to play football on Sundays because of church and stuff. But I wasn't allowed to play football. But I loved playing football every other day of the week. Used to play football with my friends out the back door, and we had a big kind of field that's now houses, and that's kind of the way of things these days, is that any kind of spare land turns into housing estates. But we'd play football for hours and hours and hours on the holidays and at the weekends. And FIFA, when it first came out, it was FIFA International Soccer on the Mega Drive. And I remember playing it. And up to that point, I'd been playing Emlyn Hughes and Match Day. But these games are a lot of them were copied, a lot of them were pirated, so you didn't have the artwork for them. I did have a few games where there was like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or Hero Turtles as we called them. I remember having the box for that. But I remember looking up the reviews of FIFA in the magazines and being really, really excited for it coming out. And I wasn't disappointed. I know it's got this inertia thing. If you go back and play it now, it seems really terrible. But at the time, I just remember being kind of blown away by the gameplay. It was something else. The other games I've got down here, and kind of moving on a wee bit, but Tomb Raider was another big one. I know we're kind of well beyond the 8-bit console here. We're up to kind of 32-bit. PlayStation 1 era. But 1997 was a big year for me. I would have been 17, coming up 18 or something like that. And Grand Theft Auto from DMA Design was due to come out. I remember poring over the magazine articles of this game, so excited for Christmas Day to come to see if I would get the game. And it was actually my best friend who bought me the game, or did he? No, it was my brother that bought me the game, I think. Because it was an 18, so I couldn't have bought it. I was too young. But I played Grand Theft Auto, the first one, for hours and hours and hours. And there was no internet to keep you going. There was no videos. I did notice when I was looking earlier on, I was kind of doing a wee bit of research for this video. And I noticed that a few of the magazines had a VHS video attached to the front of the magazine that says, if your video's not attached, go and see your newsagent. To get it from behind the counter, because people used to come in and steal the demo discs or steal the freebies off the front of the magazines. So quite often after this became a kind of bigger problem, they started hiding a lot of the stuff behind the counters, which was interesting. But yeah, Grand Theft Auto, no internet. So as the internet became a positive or negative thing, now I've had some great experiences with the internet, watching people play games. The best example of that is Alien Isolation, and I know Alan wasn't talking so much about modern games. I mean, Alien Isolation came out in 2012, I think it was, and I tried playing it, but I was too scared. Horror games and me just don't work well. Getting a wee bit better at them, but it was so enjoyable. I watched Christopher Odd playing Alien Isolation, and for all of entertainment, it was so hilarious watching some guy scream like a girl when he was getting chased by the xenomorph into the tunnels. But I've wrote down some other comments here. Kev's point. So I was watching Down the Rabbit Hole as well. Kev, again, if you've not checked out his channel, definitely go check it out. Kev was talking about how he could narrow down his kind of viewing things, that you could narrow things down to just not see Nintendo. And I don't want to kind of go too much into his video, but being able to kind of, what's the right word, customize your viewing experience on the internet. A lot of my videos that I see are zombie apocalypse stuff. It's all the people I subscribe to, obviously a lot of art videos. And now that I've recently got the Quest 3, a lot of the videos I've been looking at are VR. So obviously YouTube customizes your viewing experience to what you want it to be. Which to my mind, I agree with Kev on that point, but I disagree on the other hand. I think that sometimes then narrows you too much to the point where you're not willing to go outside your comfort zone and you might miss something that's actually epic. For example, for me, I'm not into linear games, but if I hadn't played The Last of Us, I would have been really disappointed. And The Last of Us 2, even though that went on way, way too long. But if I hadn't kind of opened up my away from just open world games, I would perhaps have missed out. I do like being able to customise my view things so that you don't see things you don't want to see. I do like that. So what else have I got here? Another point that somebody else made was to do with ethics of companies, and whether you should buy from particular companies. Now, the internet has brought to our attention many, many, many things that really most of us would have been unaware of prior to the internet existing. One of them, and again, I don't want to kind of lower the tone of the video, but Harvey Weinstein, the kind of his behaviour and exploitations and the way he conducted himself, which was completely wrong, sort of taints a lot of movies. So I was watching a movie the other day and I really enjoyed the movie, and as the credits rolled, I see his name and I'm like, oh, I've just watched a movie that was made by that guy who did X, Y, and Z. And it was quite funny because I was funny in a bad way. I was reading these magazines and there was a full-on spread to do with meeting Rolf Harris, and it's a difficult one because as a kid growing up, you weren't really caring about that type of thing. You weren't caring about adult things. You weren't caring about the news. If the news was on, it was boring. Nowadays it's depressing. It's always been depressing, but the news being on as a kid, you're just like, oh my goodness, when's the cartoons on after school? So it's kind of nice to be ignorant sometimes, and I'm not saying that's a correct way to be, but from a nostalgic point of view, many of the things that we probably grew up with wouldn't be permitted these days. And yeah, I'll leave that there. It's a balancing act, I think. But there's a lot of tainting goes on. You can't play games because they're made by some particular company. So therefore you miss out on something that could be an epic game, even though probably 95%, 99% of the people that made that game are normal, good people. They just work for a crap organisation. You might hear my dogs barking in the background, that's okay. This is just a wee Bob video. It doesn't really need to have fantastic editing or anything like that. So another good thing about the internet is, well, let me talk about the bad things. The bad things is that there's no longer this, kids don't get as much artwork exposure. They don't get exposed to the artwork that was in magazines. And when you look at, I found some Japanese magazines when I was looking today, and the artwork in them was like, I was like, oh my goodness, this is really, really, really good art. If you don't have the exposure to that, then would your passion be ignited? My daughter likes anime and manga, so you could argue that now the internet gives us the capability to get the likes of Attack on Titan and is it Attack on Titan? No, it's not. Attack of the Titans. That's terrible. I've got it here somewhere. Anyway, but she's now got the capability to watch all these things. Netflix has got a big, massive spread of movies from Japan, from movies from all over the world, which allows us to stream these movies directly to us. If we were to go into the global videos of today or the blockbusters, none of us would really pick up a Japanese movie and go, "Oh, I really want to watch this." You'd be looking for the new Schwarzenegger movie or the next Universal Soldier. Or at least that's how my childhood went. I certainly know that I wasn't interested in being cultured in those types of things. I liked the Americanized version of ninjutsu with the turtles, and so it's nice. I mean, I was watching, is it Alice in Borderlands, I think it's called. It's a Korean TV show. Again, I would never have been exposed to that had it not been for the internet, but I do miss the nostalgic fact of getting a game, reading the back cover in the car to get home, and then being able to play the game. A positive of the internet coming in is really the certain games that may have been broken or could have been expanded upon through downloads, and that's what we have these days. So if you could transport that technology back and apply it to some of your favourite games from the 8-bit era, what if they could have added an extra 5 levels on it because you had completed the game? You didn't have a lot of money, so maybe you could get a 20p download if it had existed. So I do find it kind of interesting. There's always going to be positives and negatives. I did write down here as well the ability for indie developers. A bit like being a pop star back in the day, you would have had to go into a particular record studio, only 5 of them existed or whatever, give them your demo tape and hope to the best that you could. Whereas nowadays, most people, including myself, doing this video, I can expose my creativity through my artwork or whatever to millions, if not billions, of people, based on the YouTube algorithm, obviously, and whether your video gets pushed into that. But equally, I would never have had exposure to that audience. And I think like Spectrum Next, the Go, the things that the internet has allowed for Kickstarters to be put together, it would never have been possible pre-internet days. So your ability to relive a lot of your nostalgic upbringing would be gone, because it wouldn't be, there was no capability to do that. You could have done it through discs and games, I guess, through demo discs and things like that eventually, but it is a positive of the internet that we now have the Spectrum Next. I've got one of them just here. I've not really played it, which is my own fault. And it's always the same. You buy these things thinking, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and then you never actually get around to doing anything with it. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it. I don't know that it's been very structured. It was just really to kind of talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages. So I think there's probably more advantages to having the internet than disadvantages, I think, especially from an 8-bit point of view and a classic video game point of view. We now can download all these games. We can play them in MAME. We would never have been exposed to some of the games through the Mamemeister high score kerfuffle. I've been introduced to so many games, and it's given me the drive to actually play those games through to a much further point than I would ever have had the patience to do so before. Meeting Mamemeister, meeting Ponder, Craig for Discord, meeting all the guys, Polly Moz, and all these things. It's been an incredible experience, the internet, for me. It's obviously got its downsides, but overall it's a positive experience. I think it's one of those things we need to adapt. So for those people that want to do artwork or get interested in artwork, there's new ways have been introduced, and a lot of that is through Netflix. Anime shows, it's been a big explosion. Cosplays, comic cons, these things just are kind of an evolution of what perhaps I was brought up with, and many of you guys. So anyway, thank you for listening to my drivel. great to see these community questions out there again, and hopefully we can get more, and maybe I'll do another few videos on this channel, but I always promise things and never deliver. So thanks guys, and Wee Bob is out. Cheers.